So I woke up this morning to headlines, uh, and I scratched my head a little bit and thought, am I seeing something that other people aren't, or have we just not crunched the numbers yet? And so I started with Michigan, uh, and I'm not going to quiz you on the numbers you know or don't know, but I thought I would ask you kind of a broader question. Talking to your friends and in the world you operate in, does it feel like we might be moving toward an election season in which the real winning strategy is youth?
Yeah.
There's like this pattern of youth empowerment showing up at the polls and winning, um, which is almost more significant than the DSA numbers that everyone wants to wave around. Um, and it was the first time I thought maybe the DSA isn't a socialist movement, it's a youth movement.
I just think that like many people smarter than me have noted this, but I think younger candidates have a better grasp on tactics, digital tactics to reach young people. And I think that for, years and decades, the question is like, how do you mobilize young people to go out and vote? And I think obviously it's difficult to get, youth buy-in. It's difficult to, you know, get anyone to go to the polls, specifically a young person. But I think that when you're a young person in today's society and you're online virtually at all times, when there's unprecedented access to you via candidates, but also, I think that not only is there unprecedented access, it's unprecedented volumes of information about how terrible the world is. Like there's always something sensational about how the world is on fire. So I think that at least from my perspective with my community, that has mobilized more people to act because if there's a constant stream of, stuff from Gaza or whether it's from Ukraine or whether it's on our home turf, it's hard to turn away from, no matter who you are. So I know that at least in talking with my community, that's a propellant to go to the polls. And then I just think that it's, young people know young people well. And so younger candidates know how to speak to that anxiety better than, a 70-year-old who's an incumbent running again.
So I Googled some data, and Michigan, Detroit, Denver, Maine, Upper Manhattan, kind of in each case, the Democrats that won were in their 30s in the primaries, and the Democrats
Hmm.
that lost were in their 70s and 80s. And the New York
Hmm.
Times had the Daily show yesterday about Michigan, and they first went to El Sayed's very high energy gathering, and then they
Hmm.
went to the woman who was his opponent, and it was literally four people in a living room.
Yeah.
And they were, I mean, they basically said, part of what made me think of you and it was that they basically said, um, the the young energy was so palpably different.
Hmm.
And the older voters were basically saying, we're going to go for a more conservative candidate, Democratic candidate, because we think that they have better electability. Um,
Hmm.
and I mean, I just think, for example, El Sayed, I mean, my first reaction, not being a Michiganer,
Hmm.
however they say it, was that seems like a name that would scare some people away. And then I thought, well, unless you consider Barack Hussein Obama, right? I mean,
Hmm.
who we elected twice. But I listened to him and I heard what sounded a lot like Mandami, that
Hmm.
kind of ground up energy. Here's another bit of data. Uh, the Democratic Socialists, their mean age was 71 going back three cycles ago, and it's
Hmm.
now mid 30s,
Yeah.
which I did not know. Um, I guess what you said is exactly interesting to me, which is if you believe that change is necessary and you're in a digital world where the dangers of AI or various wars are overwhelming you and you're consuming it, then
Hmm.
you're going to get up off your chair and go vote in the primaries.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, to be fair, I mean, the Michigan was close,
Hmm.
um, but there is a pattern of younger candidates winning over older incumbents.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I guess I just ask you philosophically, like, how do you feel about that?
Well, I have many thoughts. I studied political science, so kind of one thing that I remember learning and being taught is it's hard to buck incumbent. An incumbent usually has more resources. So I think like from a academic perspective, I think this is going to be super interesting to study over the next, 10, 15, 20 years to see how this plays out. And specifically, like what interventions cause that or hypothesize about that. I think obviously the digital world is one such variable that's like just fascinating and I think is gonna be again interesting to study in terms of displacing incumbents. Um, look, I think again, like I said, younger generations have inherited a difficult world, or at least again, every generation inherits something, but it's very different to have all of the wrongdoings and awful things happening at your fingertips at all times, playing on video, beheadings, like it's so overwhelming. So I think that if Gen Z is mobilizing around that, that's good news. I think that, I just was listening to, a podcast with Bradley Tusk. I'm very fascinated to know, going into the future, what does mobile voting look like if that's going to be an option? I think that that's another phenomenal way to democratize, our election process and to get more people voting and to just in general limit extremist candidates. Um, so I'm curious on like how we're going to progress moving forward, but I'm excited by the news that younger candidates are kind of getting elected. Again, I took a class in college on the legislative process, and I think there's something to say about you know, understanding the legislative process well and working within that system. But I also think that there's something to say about getting in new blood and having people who feel more representative of younger generations pushing for, issues and topic areas that matter to them, like data centers or AI. So if getting younger candidates in Congress or in positions of power mean that, more is done to limit the unwieldy, just progression of AI and social media, I'm very pro. I'm excited to see how younger voices in the mix kind of alter the conversation about AI. Even though, yesterday I think was the markup of three online safety bills, so I think we're seeing action. But obviously, I think that there's going to be hopefully renewed greater action when you have more candidates that have lived through the digital age and know its shortcomings.
So here's a kind of a summary paragraph that I put together after spending a couple of hours reading this morning. Um, the generational change framing, which is David Hogue's Leadership We Deserve, Run for Something, got attention, but the candidates that were winning were actually the ones that had infrastructure. So that's Justice Democrats, DSA, the Sanders Network, Mondami's operation in New York. One progressive strategist framed this year's wins as the culmination of years of investment in younger office holders who came up through down ballot offices, not insurgents appearing out of nowhere. The young and unknown mostly lost. The young with a movement mostly won.
Yeah.
Um, and, again, part of what's hard about consuming the news is that all of those different names, like, I mean, whenever the mainstream media talks about the DSA, they emphasize the word socialist,
Hmm.
but I don't think voters take it that way. I think
Yeah.
it's more change. Um, I think the big question that now is on my mind is November, because if all of a sudden you have MAGA Republicans versus young DSA Democrats or young first time election, then
Yeah.
you know, the media will love to bang on the blue wave. There's a blue wave
Hmm.
coming. There's going to be a blue wave. It's a midterm election. We know what that means. Um,
Hmm.
but those are going to be some really exciting, challenging races with very different ideas on both sides. Um,
Yeah. And again, I think it, two things. One, it's interesting. Like if you were to like genuinely go around and ask individuals where they stand politically, do I think the majority of individuals would align perfectly with, the MAGA platform and or a democratic socialist? No. And I think that so we're in a position where we're electing more extremist candidates, or at least there's a mismatch between the general public and where they fall politically and the candidates we're electing. So I think that's another point from like Bradley or like people who are behind mobile voting. It's like you have to ask more critically, how can we elect individuals that are like truly representative and that are, I'm not bashing any candidate on either side, but how can we begin to elect candidates that more fruitfully represent the body of individuals that they're supposed to just represent in general? So I think that's one of the reasons why I'm super excited surrounding like mobile voting efforts and stuff like that, because I think that there needs to be work done to not take extremists out of the race, but to provide just more diverse candidates and also provide, the ability to vote to more individuals.
So our friend and SMC advisor, Larry Lessig, has been out talking about, first of all, talking somewhat with foreboding about this analogy he has about the US and essentially being the Titanic. And
Yeah,
and he talks about the fact that there's a gash in the hull.
yeah,
And the gash that he describes is the state of media, social media in
hmm,
particular. But then he has a kind of an optimistic perspective, which is that he believes he's found a way, and he's moving through the court system now uh, to begin to take money out of politics. Because
yeah,
he's said for a long time to anyone who would listen that Citizens United was really the tipping point in terms of,
hmm,
you know, just the sheer volume of dark money dollars that now come into, and all of which go to media companies, right? I mean, that's where that money
yeah,
goes. Um, but he was in a Boston courtroom a week ago and is moving with relative speed, given the relative speed of the court system, toward what he believes will be a Supreme Court case.
hmm,
Um, and he said at the end of a talk that he gave with Bradley at the bookstore, he believes that he sees seven Supreme Court justices voting on his side, which is a huge number. Um,
hmm,
it was almost like a slip of the tongue, and then no, I Googled it. He said it a bunch of times. Seven is his number. Um,
hmm,
so if you're a believer in change and you're looking toward November with a Supreme Court case on the horizon and younger electeds up for office, I think I'm hopeful that people will look at the actual positions as opposed to the bumper stickers. And
yeah,
um,
yeah.
and I mean, there's a
Which
lot
is
of people. Yeah.
that's a romantic view of politics, which I like. I'm a realist through and through. So like I hear like that podcast they talk about, to your point, the metaphor of the US being the Titanic, and then the question then has to become, well, what's your democratic lifeboat? Like what do you like if you have to make decisions and like you have to place bets on what's gonna get you out of the situation, what are you going to place bets on? And everyone has different things, whether it's mobile voting, whether it's Citizen United, everyone has the solution or the path forward. And I think with the Citizens United, well, of course, like from my perspective and my vantage point and with my community, it would be great to expunge and to get rid of, dark money in politics, or at least to alleviate this horrific cycle that we're in where, you have these major, corporations and players who can buy off individuals in Congress and then basically dictate legislation that impacts millions and millions of people. So yes, I think that that's a great first step. Am I optimistic? I don't really know. Because again, I'm a realist, but I think, am I optimistic about young people actually like looking up the positions of candidates? Absolutely not. Like, I don't think that that's realistic, but I think that there are going to be more interesting issues that people are getting elected on, or at least that are mobilizing people to the movement. Like I know you mentioned the word movement earlier, and I think like that's one of the reasons why if I was running a campaign right now, I'd be hiring people who have experience in movement building or who have done grassroots efforts, because to your point, movements are built not like overnight. Like you really have to curate and mobilize surgically. Um, and yeah, I think to see that movement, I think that there are going to be interesting, issues that people are like mobilizing around. For instance, one of them is like data centers. Look at all the energy surrounding data centers now, even from like environmentalists, from Luddites, from individuals who are just scared about AI and kind of can funnel time and energy into that. So I'm just really interested on what issues are really going to mobilize Gen Z specifically when, and obviously like Gaza and things like that are going to, but I'm really interested in, what are some of those periphery issues that are going to have more sway than we might anticipate.
All right. So I'm going to spend some time over the weekend and really, first of all, hopefully smarter people than me will do the number crunching on Minneapolis because that matters. But I what I would put out there is that the idea that November feels like a rising tide of Gen Z voters as opposed to Democratic or DSA or you know or progressive or middle of the road. I think that what I'm interested in is the age of the voters in Minneapolis. That's what I'm interested
Look, I think I really, really hope that it becomes trendy to vote. Um, I really, really hope that that's a trend and that that happens. I think with Kamala, there was that big social upheaval. And there were so many memes and at least in my community, there was a lot of digital activism, but it's hard to again convert that activism into actual action and like getting to the polls. So, I think it's gonna be really interesting to watch, as you said. And I've done exit polling before. I had to do it for a class. So I'm also, I think what people should pay attention to is not only, the age of the people going into these polling stations or that are actually like casting a ballot, but you have to kind of look at exit interviews and see like, okay, what's the reasoning behind who you're voting for? Like, what is mobilizing you? Is it that you saw things from online, or is it that your friend voted, or is it that you feel like it's trendier? That's important information for us to gather. And I applaud, I hated exit polling. It was awful. So I applaud anyone who's going to do that because it is not fun.
in. Did people just brush by you?
Oh, it's awful. You have to just harass everyone who's coming out, and you have to keep a specific distance and I only got obviously like you kind of only get the extremists, so you get the people who are like really really excited about or angry about one candidate or the other. Um, so I got stuck in like hour-long conversations with one person who just really was so yeah, it's not fun.
All right. Well, we will check in next week and see if there's some data. In the meantime, have a good week.